Tommy Dewey, the first season of Casual was very well received by audiences and critics. It even got a Golden Globe nomination for Best Comedy Series. What was the attitude like going into the second season? What was everybody's expectations like?
Well, I think some of it was there was a sense that we set the bar pretty high and didn't want to disappoint. But I think ultimately everyone we work with is pro enough to know that you can't really have that like hanging over you. So we just kind of approached it as we did the first and tried to make every day excellent. I think Xander Lehman, who created the show, and Liz Tigalar, who runs it with him, were very boldly just went about their business and changed maybe kind of 20% of what we were doing to freshen it up. But one's instinct might be just chase past success, but they moved the show forward in new and interesting ways, and I think did it again heading into the third season as well.
One of the fascinating things about the show, in the first season, it sort of it sets up being about modern dating and about internet dating. I mean, your character creates this dating app or this dating website for people, and then as the series goes along, you start kind of learning a bit more about the characters and their inabilities to have successful relationships. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a nice hook to start with, and brought us, into certain themes that we continue to play with on the show. I think no one ever wanted it to be a show about the ins and outs of operating a dating app, so everyone involved smartly moved away from it, and got into kind of the sort of nastier stuff in real modern adult relationships and family stuff too. I think we're on two very strong tracks on the show. I mean, we deal with modern dating and relationships and the messiness therein, but we also deal with family in a cool and interesting way, and siblings in a cool and interesting way. And I think there's a nice mix of the two, and it gives some variety in terms of the fun of acting in it. There's a lot of variety there, jumping between those two main rails.
Well, right. The other interesting aspect of the show is the family dynamic. You inviting to live with you your sister and her daughter.
Right.
What is the dynamic like between you and the other actors in the show, Michaela and I'm forgetting the name of the girl that plays your daughter.
Lynne Barr.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
It could not be better. I could not ask for better dance partners. We all had the chance. It was a very thorough casting process. We had the chance to meet in screen tests before this even began, and became fast friends. I spent my morning with Michaela today. I mean, we're very, very close, and I'd be lying if I said that doesn't matter. I mean, one would hope that actors can show up and have instant chemistry, and you can to some extent, but I think it only helps that we spend a lot of time together. Our wavelengths have synced up in a certain way, so that it's kind of like where the person's going before they go there, sort of thing, and I think each of us have found a corner of ourselves and kind of turned up the volume on it a little bit. We're stretching to some extent, but there is something in all of us that relates to the characters we're playing. I think it's, I'll take myself out of the equation. I think besides me, it's a very well cast show. Everybody needs to make a decision about me, but I think it's put together very well, and it extends to the peripheral cast too. There's a lot of people doing good work on the show.
Well, this season finds a lot of new developments for Alex, along with those new cast members. You've got an old girlfriend who comes into the mix, a new girlfriend. You become a teacher for Laura. You're having troubles with work. You're having troubles with your sister. What were some of the big changes for Alex that he underwent in season 2?
I think Alex always needs a project, and I think it's all a means to keep the demons at bay, and I think the engaging in Laura's life was really interesting. I really love working with Tara. Didn't get to do quite as much of it in the first season. that was a fun new gear, sort of school hunting with her and then volunteering to teach, and ultimately finding out that she was much more mature than I am. I think relationship-wise, we played around in the first season with Eliza Coop's character about this idea of maybe there is sort of a one true person. He finally found his real match. It played with real romantic ideas of a soulmate, stuff like this. This season finds Alex more chasing the shiny object, wanting the thing that he can't have, and I think it's a ballsy thing to do to go at, because it's an icky quality, and I think the show cops to that, and ultimately Alex realizes it with some help from Valerie that he may not really love this girl. He's just got an idea about her, and she's the one he can't have, and playing with the moral gray area of that was a really cool, interesting new gear. I liked digging into that, and with Britt Lauer, who's fantastic on the show. Another thing I like is that I really like doing this kind of serialized television. We don't have a lot of. We'll occasionally do a standalone episode, a fun bottle episode. We did the Thanksgiving episode in the first season. Those are really rewarding in their own right. I like to dig into something and spend a few weeks on it, and the show lets us do that. It's not like Britt comes in one week, she's gone the next. She did several episodes with us, and so you can really sort of shine a flashlight into all the corners of the relationship when you got a few weeks to work on it. And
that's something that's very unique for TV comedy.
Yeah,
we've seen a lot of drama recently, but it's new and unique for comedy.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I think the old thinking was that, in the days where you needed to get to 100 and syndicate, there was this which made everyone rich. So I mean, I'm not boo-hooing those days. I wasn't a part of them, but it was this idea you needed these bite-sized standalone things, and I think with streaming and binging and all this stuff, those rules went out the window, and Hulu did not hesitate to say, do this sort of quieter, subtler show that's serialized, that really plays like a long Jason Reitman movie, and it felt, in a great way, felt sort of bold and experimental, and I think the response to that and other shows on other networks, especially the streaming networks, I think has been so positive. It's just now that door is blown open. People can make those kind of shows, and I feel lucky, to be a part of that, because 5-6 years ago, comedy was one thing, and to be frank, I'd done a lot of comedy of different shapes and sizes, and it always left me wanting for something, wanting to dig a little deeper, wanting to do a page that didn't have, a page or two or a scene or two that didn't have to have a joke in them, and Casual was like, oh, okay, I'm home. I can be funny. I can do all the, I can do a little shtick here and there and have some fun, but also I can do the satisfying stuff of, do a tearjerker scene or whatever it is. So I feel lucky that these streamers have opened up the door for that kind of stuff.
Well, you bring up a good point there, in that the show is very funny in a lot of instances, but in a lot of instances as well, it becomes very serious. I mean, at the end of this season, you guys deal with a very serious subject, which is the death of your father.
Yeah, it's heavy.
In moments like that, I mean, how do you guys find the right balance between the comedy and the drama like that?
That's a great question. I mean, I think ultimately our job as actors is to be ready to play the spectrum on a day like that. Do the funniest version of it, do the saddest version of it. We rely. It really is Xander's voice. This show is very specifically and tonally his. And so he's there every day, and there's always we can always check with him, but directorially too. I mean, Fred Savage directed those last two, just the last one, the finale, this last year, and he had a good sense of it, and I think we all are a little indulgent, us artists, and so what you want to do is just the bawling and the chewing the scenery and stuff like that. And it takes a restrained director, and I got to give Fred a lot of credit for this, to come in and be like, okay, that was great. That was a super sad version of that scene, but it may be too much of a tonal jump from the last scene we did and also think about these characters. They bury stuff, and deal with grief in weird sort of backwards ways. So I think the combination of Xander being there, knowing what he wants, and a really crack team of directors. Casual has become a real playground for a bunch of talented people that may not do a ton of TV but want to come do a couple weeks with us. And we've been really lucky in that respect. Filmmakers that maybe haven't done a ton of TV comedy in the traditional sense, and thus give it this kind of freshness.
Right.
Oh yeah.
With your parents, I mean, it brings up an interesting point, because you see the generational effects, right?
Yeah.
Their marriage is so weird, and you kind of see the effects that it has on you and Valerie. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I think I mean, that to me is where you start with especially the Alex character, and building him and kind of putting the layers on, is like, what is the history there? And I mean, they're very self-involved, narcissistic people, which is why Alex and Valerie are so close. I mean, you can in terms of getting, as we prepare to do the show, and getting comfortable with the idea that these siblings are so weirdly close, obviously platonic, but just very weird, strangely close, in a way that may be off-putting to some of their friends, and some of the people they date. I think we see that from the first scene of the first season. It's easier to understand and get your head around it performance-wise from the context of, like, literally these people are having sex parties in the other room, and there's these two children entertaining themselves, protecting each other. I think the show also smartly gets away from we can and should blame our parents for everything. It speaks to the Alex and Valerie's idiosyncrasies, but I think it also says, especially by the end of 2, you see in that last episode and the one leading up to it, this is kind of like, look, this is the hand you're dealt. It's time to man up and make the most of your life, because you'll be 80 years old still blaming your dad, and what have you done? And I think I don't know. I think it splits that hair well. In addressing both sides of it. Yeah, let's blame our parents for some stuff, but at the end of the day, you got to find a way to get on with it,
Right. So season 3 is coming up, and you and Michaela wrote an episode of the upcoming 3rd season. What was that experience like, writing an episode of the series?
It was a little trippy, to be honest with you. It's a weird. Both of us have separately written and created shows, but to come in after playing them for 2 seasons and then put on the writer's cap was a different experience. It was wildly fun. The first thing we got to do was join the writer's room for 3 weeks, and just to see how they work. And have the opportunity to be in awe of their process, because it's different on every show, and this show runs really smoothly and really efficiently. But also to pitch, I think the writers were kind of like, this is really weird. These voices we write are now here, kind of saying the jokes in their voices. That was kind of wild. And then to go off for another 3-4 weeks and work on the script with Michaela was really fulfilling and rewarding. It only made us closer, which also helps the acting. I mean, I think all this stuff it creates a synergy. But I think, actors that know how to write are good with dialogue, and they have a cheat, which is they can basically perform it to one another in the writing process. And Michaela and I did a lot of that. Getting into a scene, we'd improvise for a little bit, try to find our way, then going back over it in a 3rd rewrite testing the jokes and sort of seeing if they came out of our mouth in the way we wanted it to. We were lucky in that way, and man, I learned a lot doing it. You know, I have worked on the writing side, done mostly original stuff. So then to write in someone else's voice with someone else's guidance, speaking of Xander and Liz, was really cool. I mean, we had fun. I haven't seen it yet, so knock on wood. I hope it came out well, but it was fun to do.
And are Tara, Lynne, or are any of the other actors going to be in the episode, or is it just you and Michaela?
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just me and Michaela in Hawaii. It's weird how that worked out. And I get to shoot guns and throw grenades, and wearing wonderful gowns and It's just funny how the story went that way. We included Tara. I do have to we got really lucky. We wrote LACMA into the episode, LA County Museum of Art, which is not the easiest location to land. As you probably know, locations are tough, and big, beautiful, popular ones are even tougher. And we ended up getting to shoot there. We didn't have to rewrite and locate it somewhere else. We actually shot at the museum, and so had really neat backdrops for what we wrote.
Well, nice. I look forward to seeing that. I like LACMA a lot. From this last season, what were, if you had to choose like an episode or a scene that you thought was a highlight from it for your character, what would that be?
The first one that comes to mind is the episode, the finally confronting dad episode before his demise. You know, finally saying, you know, I'm lonely and sad because you made me that way. And we got all different versions of that on the day. I think it's a very moving scene, you know, but ultimately what we came to was that Alex, while he is so close to a meltdown, doesn't want to give his dad the sort of satisfaction of seeing a complete, you know, sob fest or whatever that might end up being. And so I think we found a really sweet spot for that. And then the great Fred Melamed, you know, you can't really hate him. You know, he's so well cast in this. It's like, and he gives an honest answer, you know, and he says, you know, you've got your sister, and that's a real love. And so just the kind of 2 seasons leading up to this, it felt like we'd been leading up to that conversation for 2 seasons, and it was so satisfying to work on. And then you know, I remember shooting the very last scene. I guess it's not the very last scene, but it's the last biggie of the season, where we're sitting at a table eating fortune cookies. There's a slow push in as we hear the news of, I mean, spoiler alert, but our dad dies. There's this lightness and this sort of witty banter between Michaela and I that I think that kind of thing really defines the show, being able to joke in the face of such odd circumstances and grief and all that stuff. You know, I think the people that run this show are very good about knowing just how to play with the dials. You know, just when you just feel like it's too much, there's a great joke to kind of lift your spirits, or just when you feel like it's getting too silly, you'll get blindsided by something pretty heavy. And yeah, I think those 2 come to mind. But you can't have any of those without all the great scenes throughout the season, you know, that lead up to this. I could go on and on about the scenes with Britt Lauer, because I think she was just so keyed into that character. But yeah.
Well, Tommy, congratulations on the 2nd season, and I look forward to seeing the 3rd season. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
All right, you too.